So now I'd like to ask same question to both professor. This day I'm telling my friends, oh, book will publish, and everyone ask me what kind of book. But I can't explain with short word. Would you mind explain me with short phrase what is it about this book? For example, Professor Kameguchi, how would you answer this question?
I'm now thinking about the Japanese title of our book, Diversity of Time.
Interesting.
In
Do you mind explaining more?
psychotherapy.
Psychotherapy. How
Diversity.
we use time?
Because many kinds of time. Family time, school time, company's time, Italian time, Japanese time.
Yes.
It's very simple. Different kinds of time system. In China, is now New Year in Chinese calendar.
Yes.
Many different historical systems. We have also Western time. Also, we use Japanese time. Like now, Reiwa period. Reiwa era and Showa era and also Edo era. We changed the system, chronological system.
Yes, because the chronological system is arbitrary and it's not, because we divide the time in a more or less arbitrary way, actually. Why we have the 7-day week, for example, of this kind of stuff. But at the same time, there is something objective in the passing of time. You have the sun rising, the sun going down, and that always happens, and it creates a difference, a progression in time. So time is a very complex construct because on the one hand, it is quote unquote objective, and on the other hand, it is quote unquote social, and on the other hand, it is subjective. And I think the therapist works at the intersection between this dimension. Again, but to make it short, to cut a long story short, is there are different times, and the therapist has to be aware of that. So, for example, of the fact that different clients or different families have different time frames.
Yes, I think so.
Time frames.
If you have depression, everything is very slow. If you have anxiety, everything is very fast, too fast for the person. And if you have a family with a schizophrenic person, everything is fragmented, and it makes no sense, But the therapist has his own time, and if the therapist is naive, he thinks that he can apply his time to everybody, but this is not true. I think that's an important dimension too,
Recently, okay, please.
Okay. Very interesting, this concept of frame, and we try to see problem through the client always, his interpretation or her interpretation. But now this time frame. So our therapist, should we jump in their time, or we should pull in this
to our time?
Our time.
it depends, but we cannot pull people out of their frame if you don't understand that frame. So I think the first step is trying to understand, the pace of the clients, how, you have families that are very, very absorbed by the past, and you have families that live in the present, and we have to understand that. Because if somebody is absorbed in the past, it's useless to try to push them into the future unless we have extracted, you said, them from their past focus time frame, so to speak. But if a person is, or a family is in the present, it is useless to try to go into the past because they simply don't understand that.
Is this give me idea of joining family? So should I join their past, or should I join their future, or should I join present? Can I say it like that?
Yes, that's the idea. And then when you have joined, you try. I always try to expand the time frame, so to create a connection, past, present, and future. I think.
Recently, I'm very interested in the topics of body time.
That's
intrinsic body time, circadian rhythm, 24 hours in day. It's a biological. It has a biological base.
Yeah.
For animals, even human or apes and mammals. And from the body time perspective, we she will understand the almost 50 or 1 hour interview time. It's a rather rigid time frame. We start one time to 10 minutes to 20 minutes, 30 minutes. And almost after 30 minutes, we have to change some kind of a process or phase in one session. And then we end the, after 50 minutes until 1 hour, we finish the session. And this is a kind of rigid body time frame.
Yes.
Almost same in psychotherapy. Even in Western world, also we use same almost 1 hour interval. I think it's a common time frame paradigm.
Yes, and once again, probably it's partly arbitrary, it's partly useful, because you know when to put the next patient, of course. There is also this, but it creates some rigidity, though, because there are, for example, there are kind of patients who have problem in adjusting to this rigidity that we create, because it's useful for us. I know that I have a schedule, but for example, if you have an adolescent, sometimes it's really hard to arrive to 50 minutes. And there are some people who are barely contained in 1 hour, and they could go on for 2 hours. So I think, to what extent must we adjust to clients' times, and to what extent we have them adjusting to us? So that's still something open, question mark somewhere. To what extent?
Do you usually use the time for one session? You use 40 or 50 minutes,
15.
or even more short time session?
No, I usually I am between 45 and 50 minutes usually for a session. Although usually, so if I have a family session, if I have an individual session, it's between 45 and 50. If And if I have a couple, more or less, it's the same. But if I have a family, usually is 1 hour, and sometimes it could be longer than 1 hour, but at that point it depends on my time schedule. If I don't have time, by the way, because I have to adjust everybody in the day, I have to stick to 1 hour.
Yeah, I see. And also, I'm very interested in the topic of breathing, exhale and inhale, or some kind of relaxation for ourselves, also for family members. I'm very interested in the relaxation technique during family interview, or also in individual sessions.
In breathing, that's something I never focused on, so it should be interesting, but I don't have experience of that.
Oh, I see.
I remember that Tom Anderson used to say something about the breathing in the session, but I can't remember exactly what it was. It was about creating a kind of a synchrony with the patients, something like that.
I've heard that Tom Anderson has some kind of expertise in physical therapy or something, body work for clients as a physician or medical doctors.
Yes, and for a time he worked closely with a massage therapist.
Oh, yes, yes.
He was very aware, so he became more aware of what happens actually in the body during interaction.
Yeah.
But I
have also experience of some kind of body work for clients. Cerebral palsy, the children, is my first clients in graduate students, almost 40 or 50 years ago. I work as some kind of physical therapist for treating handicapped children, and also their parents or trainers. Some kind of sensory motor psychotherapy.
So that's interesting. I never went deeply into that, but it must be interesting. Yeah, extremely. So, I think all this physical part, we read something when we were writing the book, but then we didn't use a lot of that in the book actually. So I think that would be another interesting development. Time and the body, and then time in the body and the other. What. I had learned once that when they did some experiment on therapeutic relationship, they had some physical measurement during a session. They put they recorded the blood pressure and all this stuff. What they saw was that there was a synchronization during good therapy between the heart rate of the therapist and the client, and the breathing rhythm of the therapist and the client. So if the relationship worked, they entered in the same rhythm. So all this part about the rhythm should be interesting to study.
I see. Do you use some kind of technique such as empty chair, like Gestalt therapy?
Yes.
Do you use some kind of
in
role playing?
Yes, in individual therapy, we do not exactly the empty chair exactly as they use there, but there is something similar that we call presentifying the third party. So the idea is, let's begin to ask questions about a specific person, and we try to make the specific person very present in the room, although the is what would your mother think? What would your mother think?
Yes, yeah.
Go forth in this respect.
Maybe it's some kind of technique of enactment.
Yes, to an extent.
Miniature technique or methodology.
So similar to an extent. It's more about let's have the presence of the other. So what we want is the person to focus on the other, so to have more awareness of the relationship.
Oh yes,
the idea. You are. I see you individually, but you are part of a network of relationships, and I'm interested in the network of relationships rather than just in you. So,
okay. Please, Mr. Shimokawa, say something about to our conversations.
This is a very interesting conversation. For example, I love this kind of conversation. But sometimes when I attend case study, it's very difficult to explain this kind of feelings. The case study, I should explain very well. Sounds I know everything, I have all information. But in reality, I don't know. I know maybe maximum 20% of everything, but still I'm going. So this kind of sense of physical sense are very useful. But, but if I write on the paper, I'm become very surrealism.
Well, I think the way to try to embody this a bit more. I realize that sometimes systemic family therapy ideas seem quite abstract, quite so complex to apply, but actually they do apply if you have a session and you do what we call the micro analysis of the session, meaning that it is what we do with our trainees. So if we see a session behind the mirror, and while I'm seeing the session, I take down, what happens minute by minute, questions, reactions, etc. And then when the therapist comes out, I have some idea of what are the most important points, and then I go into that, more or less. It's not. I don't work on the transcripts because otherwise it take a lot of time. I want to work in real time. So when the session is finished, I begin to interview the therapist. At minute 10, you ask this question: what happened? Why did you ask this question? What came in your mind? What was your reaction to that? How did you feel in asking this question, and what you perceived in the clients? And then I noticed the clients answer so and so. How did you feel him? And so you go on, and here you construct in practice these very complex ideas. You put the ideas into practice.
How did you call this? Microanalytic?
Microanalysis of the session. We mean I want to understand the micro process. So it's not on the big idea. I hypothesize that this family is made so and so, but it is on the small idea. In that moment, I thought that this person was focused on the relationship with, say, her father. I'm thinking of the session I saw yesterday. So the person actually mentions something about the father. I have the feeling it is interesting. At that point, I begin asking questions about the father. And maybe the person is not so keen to stay there, but I want her to stay there. And after a while, something interesting comes out.
Do you use any kind of video type?
Yes.
Clip?
Yes, we actually, when we are in training, we video record all the sessions. So sometimes we go through the recordings. The fact is, since we try to have a lot of practice in our training, you end up having too many video recordings to be able to analyze that. So it's or sometimes I ask, okay, you had this session, we have a recording of this session that you made. Select 5 minutes from the session that
5 minutes. Okay.
And we analyze those 5 minutes, because otherwise you have an enormous amount of sessions. Each session is 50 minutes, and in order to process all of that, you need 10 hours. It's impossible, you know. But if you take samples and you ask people, identify a sample that is meaningful for you. Here, something happened that for me defined the tone of the session, or was the important part of the session. And when we have that, we work on that.
I think that it is an important task for us to pick up some symbolic 5 minutes unit during 50 minutes.
Yes.
You should pick up some part. Former part or a more later part of sessions.
Yes.
We have to 1 or 2 segment of 5 minutes.
Yes, something very brief, but that give an idea of what was happening in the session. And so this solves the contradiction between having too much material and not enough time. Once again, it's an issue of time. Once again, you need time to process therapies, I think.
I think so.
Can I take my experience?
Yes, please.
One time I was in the counseling room with my client, and we had like a 10 minutes silent. I couldn't say anything, and also client couldn't say anything. It was very awkward silent. I was not expected this silent. And that moment came ambulance outside of the building. Vivo, vivo, vivo. And for this sound, I feel saved. That sound saved me because occupied some sound. And I understand. Also, my client felt the same way. Oh, thanks for ambulance. And I understood he felt that way, and he understood I felt that way. So we shared some common experience. But after this moment, session become such easy. But I can't explain why. Why that's like that. So when I try to explain people,
well, I think something happens at a very pre-verbal level. Something happens between the two of you that cannot be shared in words. And then you have a connection through an external sound at that point. It is as if having a time that stands still for a while, and you have no passing of time, which of course is impossible, but that's a subjective feeling.
But I finished to conclude this session, and I asked him, what do you remember about our session? He said, ambulance. It was exactly the same memory with me.
I think that it's some kind of idea of a quantum leap. Quantum leap in during sessions. Also, quantum theory. Do you know physics? Theory, quantum physics.
In Japanese, how to say that?
Leap is a jump.
Jump.
Quantum jump.
Quantum jump. Yes, and it's a discontinuity, something a pattern that changes from one to another, and it's not moving in a continuous way. Yes, it happens.
It's a kind of second order change. Second order change. Former pattern between you and clients are crushed.
Yes.
And keep 10 minutes breakdown.
Mm.
And you were waiting for new pattern of interaction between therapist and client.
Wow.
Ambulance tells some kind of end of your former interaction between clients and you. And then quantum leap happened. And you too start new pattern of interactions. It's brand new interaction, and it's kind of empathic understanding between you and client. It's pure empathic understanding.
Yeah, yeah. Oh,
I think so.
thank you.
And
Thank you. Finally.
you are freed from the stuckness.
So it has something to do with the idea of a continuous and discontinuous change.
Oh yes, yeah.
Yes. In the book, we were very much on discontinuous change. Today, what I think is sometimes in therapy you have some discontinuous change because you have small changes happening session after session, very little, and so that's continuous. And sometimes you have discontinuous change. You have one session, and the client says after one moment in that session, I felt something different. Probably, yes, I agree that it probably happened to you and your client in that specific session.
Well, thank you. Thank you. For a long time, nobody explained me that. Thank you.
Okay. So I was wondering whether I don't know if Mr. Shimokawa explained to you the day we could not meet. We had this, or I had this idea that maybe when we have the book published, we can have a Zoom meeting with more, inviting people in order to have this idea circulate. Do you think that's possible?
I have one problem about this Zoom meeting because I will quit my position in department of university until the end of this March, and I will be free from April.
Well, I think if you are free, you have more possibility. Actually, since it's a Zoom meeting, we don't need a big organization. The important thing is to have some information for people. Of course, being an event for the book, we don't have to charge anything to people. So has to pay. People just have to receive a link and connect. And maybe we can think of something to say, some maybe presentation of the book, a case study, discussing a couple of cases from different, from one from Japan, one from Italy, something like that, in order to.
How do you think, Mr. Shimokawa, how do you think about the set up some kind of another member to join this meeting in near future?
Yeah, yes, I'm very happy to do that. But in Japan, of course, I'd like to Professor Kameguchi choice people. I don't know people. I don't have a network.
Yes.
Okay. I will ask some member of the associations. They are working on the lecture or seminars in mental health field.
Okay, that could be.
And I have some meeting with them, and I asked them to help to our project.
Okay, so
between Italy and Japan, and some member will join this pre-conversations.
All right. That would be a good idea to begin to establish the network.
Okay.
Maybe I'll try to find somebody here in Italy to join.
Oh, yes, yeah.
To expand a bit the conversation. All right.
It's a good time to start a new event.
Yes.
In our family therapy, also individual therapy.
Yeah. Great.
In systemic ideas.
Great. I'm all for that. So can we decide another date for the next meeting at this point? So let me get my agenda.
Okay. How about the middle of May?